Good evening. It is time for today's tax talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. It is Thursday, September 1st, the year of our Lord 2022. And the propaganda war is being fought. The IRS and all of its minions are out there telling us not to worry. All's well. This is just, you won't have to worry about anything. That's what we're going to talk about today. Won't you join us? Well, as we mentioned, I think it's all propaganda. I guess the other side will say, well, this is propaganda. Yeah, they're telling us that the IRS is coming after us, and that's just not true. Well, I think I'm always trying to tell you the truth. And, I've been working with the IRS for many years. I know how it works. And you do too. You've seen what's going on with the IRS. But in all this, there's all these stories out there now. Don't worry. I remember the other day we did a story about the commissioner of the IRS and his op-ed. And he held up a straw man and knocked him down over and over again, and making arguments that nobody else is making. Oh, we're not arming 87,000 new people, and nobody ever said you were. But again, that's the big thing that they're using, and that's some of these stories too. So we're going to turn to some of these stories right away. I think first I'm going to go kind of different than I usually do. Let us first look at the headlines. Okay, so it's about time we properly funded the IRS, from Eleanor Cliff. Now, think about this for your own life. Do you think funding the IRS, they've been underfunded, so they haven't been bothering you? Really? Do you think the IRS needs to double their income? We need to double the size of the IRS, and that's properly funding the IRS? I don't know who thinks that way, because I certainly don't. Here's the next story. Don't worry, the IRS isn't hiring an army, in quotes, army of auditors. Here's what's really happening. Well, they are hiring 87,000 new people. I don't know what would constitute an army, but 45%, 55% or more of those people are going to be in enforcement. I don't know, half of 87,000, 40-some thousand, 43 and a half, 43,500. Is that an army? I don't know. Might be just a troop. I don't know. No, a troop is one person. Okay. Next story here, and this is what's really coming out here. And they're tying this to January 6th. And the insurrectionists and the mega Republicans. IRS is to conduct a safety review of threats of the IRS workers. Because if you're objecting to this, well, you hate IRS workers, and there's violence. You're saying that they have guns, and so there's violence, and we're going to have to stop that. And maybe we get the Department of Justice to come after you, like we did the school marms when they went to the school board meetings and objected. Maybe we can get them. You object to the IRS, you must be an insurrectionist. Final one is here. The $80 billion question. What will the IRS do with all that money? What do you think they're going to do with the money? They already said only 4% of that money is going to be dedicated to customer service. 4%. You think that's enough to start answering your phone call? I'd say probably not. It's probably not enough. We'll see. I hope they do start answering phone calls. I hope they do start processing returns. Remember, we talked about 30 million information returns that were discarded, thrown away, and they never got processed. So this is the story that we really want to. Eleanor Cliff, we all know Eleanor Cliff is where she stands. Big government types. The Internal Revenue Service is among the beneficiaries of the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act. Always have to laugh. With nearly $80 billion headed to the beleaguered agency. That money will be used to hire 87,000 new employees over 10 years, including a small percentage who will work on criminal investigations and carry firearms. Well, that's true. Nobody ever said all of them are going to carry firearms. Nobody ever said that. This is alarming to Republicans because they're evil, who have starved the IRS of resources since the Newt Gingrich era. Starved them. Their budget this year is $14 billion before this. $14 billion. Does that sound like they're starving the IRS? Doesn't sound like starving to me. Democrats didn't exactly step up either until the situation became dire. IRS agents aren't anybody's idea of a superhero. The situation became dire because they all sat home for 2020. That's why the situation's dire. Got nothing to do with not having enough money. And here's what all those people stayed home. They still all got paid. They just didn't do the work. And so now they're behind. Okay. Makes sense, doesn't it? It's been almost a quarter century since George H.W. Bush, the Republican presidential nominee at the time, accused Michael Dukakis, the Democratic nominee, of wanting an army of IRS agents unleashed into everyone's kitchen after Dukakis said better enforcement could raise as much as $35 billion. Well, that's the same thing going here. That's a valid criticism, isn't it? You want to hire more IRS agents to go after people. Well, who are they going to go after? Oh, the rich. We've been told that since H.W. Bush and before. That was the 80s. Did they go after the rich? That's 40 years ago. Have they gone after the rich? I don't think they have. Since then, the rich have gotten richer, armed with lawyers, while the IRS has been gutted. $14 billion gutted. With budget cuts that former IRS Commissioner John Koskinen called tax cuts for tax cheats. Well, that's propaganda, because that's not what's happening. That's not what the budget cuts were all about, to help people cheat. It was to stop the IRS from being a overbearing agency against the left's political enemies. That's what it was about. Still should be about that, in my mind. GOP scare tactics about the IRS have worked in the past. You know why they've worked in the past? Because people know their own life. People know that the IRS is out there, and everybody's afraid of the IRS. Why is that? And so when a politician takes the side of the people over the IRS, people could generally gravitate to that. Makes sense. Give the people what they want. GOP scare tactics about IRS have worked in the past, and with anti-government fever running high, anti-government fever. The insurrectionists. Anti-government fever. That's America, anti-government. Democrats better get ahead of what's coming. And that's what she's helping them do right now with this propaganda piece. The hiring of 87,000 new IRS agents is enough to send a chill up everyone's spine, even if it is a wild exaggeration. How is it a wild exaggeration? These are the IRS own numbers. The GOP has glommed onto the job description for new hires to falsely claim that they will all be armed. Nobody ever said they were all going to be armed, but that job description was real. That was out there about being armed and willing to use deadly force. Nobody invented that. That was the IRS that put that out there. When only a very small percentage of a lot of people is a lot of people. But the IRS component is the only part of the Inflation Reduction Act that Republicans safely rail against. Provisions to lower prescription drug costs and strategies to fight climate change are broadly supported by. No, they're not. What's going on in California? You think they love all the people there? Love that? They can't turn their air conditioning on. They can't charge their electric vehicles, even though they're going to be required to have one. How are you going to drive when they start brownout and blackouts and you can't charge your car? Or when they follow you everywhere you go, or they can just turn it off whenever they feel like. How are you going to feel then? Oh, they wouldn't do that. Did you hear what's going on in Colorado today? Right, Colorado, the energy company froze customers' thermostats at 78 degrees because they're having a heat wave. So you have to be in your house at 78 degrees. I guarantee the politicians, they didn't put their thermostat at 78 degrees. But you have to. But beefing up tax enforcement is easy to exploit. No, because everybody doesn't want it. Almost no one likes paying taxes, even if most recognize it as a basic necessary function of government. Treasury Secretary Yellen earlier this month sent a letter to the IRS commissioner that said, contrary to the misinformation from opponents of this legislation, get this, small business or households earning $400,000 per year or less will not see an increase in the chances that they are audited. Is that right? Do you believe that? I don't believe it. And I think there's been a lot of studies out there from the Congressional Budget Office and others, nonpartisan folks, some even partisan folks, who say this is just impossible. Of course, they're going to go after people with less than $400,000. I can tell you right now that information returns and these 1099K forms that are coming out that we talked about yesterday on this show and others, that's people less than $400,000. They're going to be hit. Rhetoric is a Trump employee. Oh, he's a big government Trump employee who wrote an op-ed in Forbes prior to his nomination, before he was nominated, supporting Trump's decision to withhold his tax returns and critiquing the work done by what he called the wealth squad within the agency, the targeted high-income individuals for audits. Rhetoric's term is up in November, and he has been vocal in his positive support of the IRS initiative. He's trying to keep his job. I mean, come on. They're going to fire him. He likes this job, this important job. IRS staffing has declined by about 19% since 2010, with the bulk of a reduction in compliance and enforcement. The agency has fewer auditors than any time before since World War II. Now, we all know that most of these audits now are done electronically. It doesn't take anybody. You don't need, we already talked many times on this show about the number of people that are required to process tax returns, that was really the bulk of the IRS employees, or at least 25% of these people that she's talking about before were employees to process tax returns that they don't have to process anymore. And so we don't need the same amount of people to do more work. The agency has fewer auditors than any time. John Koskinen lamented at one point that it was futile for the agency to do more with less, as congressional Republicans urged. The IRS would do less with less, he said. They're doing less with more. Their budget's $14 billion, which meant fewer audits, and almost two-thirds of the tens of millions of tax callers would go unanswered. It's actually more than two-thirds. That's 66%. It's 1 in 9 get answered. Alex Brill is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative-leaning think tank. When they say conservative-leaning, it means they're not really conservative. I don't know the think tank, so maybe they are. I don't know. He puts it bluntly: either enforce the tax code well enough to collect the revenue, or raise taxes to collect the revenue. How about we cut the government? We don't need as much revenue. How about we do that? That's not even in the cards, is it? Republicans don't want to raise taxes, Brill told the Daily Beast, and why should they? The reason I would like to enforce the tax code is a lot of people are not paying what they owe, and they tend to be on the upper end of the income scale. I have never seen any proof of that. The risk of being audited has gone down, so people feel they'll be all right if they're not reporting all their income. Almost all income is tracked. Not all income. Some people get paid cash from customers, but most, and that's why they want to go after they want to capture any little bit that they could. That's why they want to get everybody's banking information. How would that work? They can't process those returns that they have now. The risk of being audited, it is relatively easy to get more revenue with fairness. No, it isn't. He's not a fan of the $400,000 threshold, seeing it as a political ploy. If you're earning $399,000, you ought to be paying your taxes. Don't worry, they'll be audited too. Democrats are trying to say to their voters, they'll do it, but not to you. You won't have to worry. Truth is, people who don't pay their taxes should pay their taxes. Seth Hanlon is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, a liberal-leaning think tank, and he agrees that it is nothing short of a miracle that Biden and the Democrats got money for the IRS. How is that short of a miracle? They have both sides of Congress and they have the presidency. They can do any damn thing they want, right? As long as they can fix the system, and which is what they did. Got this with mere majority of the votes instead of the 60 that I think that this would have required. And an agency that politicians see little value in championing. This was a unique opportunity because the IRS is perpetually screwed in the appropriations process, where it has a compete with countless other very popular programs. And so they only got $14 billion before this. I keep going back to that because most people don't understand how much they get. Former IRS commissioners and Treasury secretaries for both parties are lauding the $80 billion initiative, which the Congressional Budget Office projects will bring in $207 billion in unpaid taxes, paying for itself many times over. Yet Republicans are panicked in their opposition. Grassley, the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee, told Fox News, are they going to have to strike a strike force that goes in with the AK-15s? Okay, you got that wrong. Already loaded, ready to shoot some small business person in Iowa with these? Because I think they are going after middle class and small business people. Because basically they think anyone who has a pass-through income is a crook. And they aren't paying their fair share. And we're going to go after them. I agree with them. Not that they're bringing AR-15s at everybody, but there are going to be more of them. And they are going to crack down on people. They've already said that. Florida Senator Rick Scott is in an open letter to job seekers, tell them, don't work for Biden's IRS army. He says the IRS is making it very clear that you are that not only need to be ready to audit and investigate your fellow hardworking Americans, your neighbors and your friends, you need to be ready and, to use the IRS's words, willing to kill them. Well, if you're going to get into that, that is true. They did ask that. In reality, boilerplate language about the willingness to be trained in and use deadly force is included in every federal job description that involves law enforcement, like the EPA has one. Did you know that? It does not apply to customer service and claims processors, the bulk of the new hires. Everybody knows that. After an uproar on Twitter over the exaggerated claims, the IRS scrubbed the language and announced it would be conducting a security review and risk assessment of its 600 facilities nationwide. I already showed you that they're doing that. Why would they scrub it if it's totally perfectly fine? There's real dangerous rhetoric coming from Republican politicians just spouting the truth back to you, what you say. That's rhetoric. Part of why Republicans have gone off the deep end is they believe bogus conspiracy theories that the IRS targeted conservatives 10 years ago. Well, that's been proven to be true. Now, she says here that it isn't, but it absolutely is true. In 2013, a high-level IRS employee, Lois Lerner, was pillared for singling out conservative groups for scrutiny by using keywords like Tea Party. She resigned, and Barack Obama fired the then acting commissioner of the IRS. If they didn't do anything wrong, why would Barack Obama fire them? Why would she have to resign? Why would the report 3 years after this came out and said that they were right? Why did they have to pay? Money to some of these organizations after court cases if everything was fine? Because of course it wasn't, and they did go after conservative groups. Even though in a 2017 report found that liberal groups had also been targeted in the same way. The sense of grievance remains entrenched on the right, but not the left. Republicans are fixating on the IRS because it is a familiar scare tactic that's worked in the past. It works because it's true. That's why it works. Democrats better step up their game to educate voters that the Biden initiative is about tax enforcement of corporations and high-earning individuals who are getting away with billions and approving regular service to regular taxpayers. The IRS needs a makeover, and it's about time. Well, I have to disagree with Ms. Cliff. My own opinion. I don't know, those articles get me going because we don't know the truth. We all know the truth. This isn't the truth. This is propaganda. And the IRS and the government has their people out, and they're all trumpeting the same message. That we all know that they do that. The mainstream media, they all say the same thing all the time. I mean, we've all seen the videos of the news anchors from around the country using exactly the same words over and over and over again. And just like now, you can't read a story about President Trump without them saying, who falsely says that there's, without proof, that they use the same language all the time. It's all propaganda. Anyway, that's where we are. So thanks so much for joining us. I have too much fun reading this stuff. It's so easy. So it's such a low-hanging fruit, isn't it? Remember, we're going to ask you to like and subscribe. We need your help, so please help us. And remember, if you have IRS problems, if you owe the IRS money, first thing you should do is get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problems Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, and get your free copy. We will ask for the shipping and handling, small shipping and handling fee, but the book and all the bonuses are free. So thanks so much for helping us. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow is the Trust Radio Network at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Here we have attorney David Schwanner, personal injury attorney. He's a friend of mine. He's been on the show before. He's going to be on again tomorrow, so you don't want to miss that. So you can, at all places you can find us, watchtalkradio.com. We're on YouTube, as you know, Facebook, log in, wherever you can find us. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you here tomorrow, I hope. Out.